The training wheels appear to be coming off for Quinshon Judkins, and it might be the exact thing the Browns need. We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast, and proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. Quinshon Judkins has officially been moved up to the number one running back on the Browns depth chart, and it's time for him to take that rightful place as the Browns workhorse back, because frankly, they need him. The weaknesses of Cleveland's defense that the Ravens exposed this past weekend, plus Kevin Stefanski faces his toughest challenge yet as Browns head coach. First, though, I do want to thank you for being every day at the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward Mazda Move and Be Moved. And yes, Quinshon Judkins, as the team put out their official Week 3 release for the Packers game on Sunday, has been elevated to the number one running back on the depth chart. Not necessarily a surprise, because that is the place everyone expected him to be really at the start of the season. Had he not been dealing with the legal situation and the off-the-field stuff and been able to participate in training camp in the preseason and all those things. But we know that that's not what happened. He wasn't there, so he got off to a little bit of a slow start here, signed his contract before Week 1, played in Week 2, actually started in Week 2 because he was out there for the very first play. But it seemed like the Browns kind of had him on a pitch count, if you will. He played 20 snaps in the game, had 10 carries, 61 yards, showed some life, or brought some life, I should say, to this Browns running game that's been a struggle otherwise through the first couple weeks of the season. And really, I couldn't come at a better time for Cleveland, as you're teetering on, I talked about it this week, but you are teetering on potentially starting the season here 0-6. Like, that is very much a possibility. You got the Packers this week, a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Then after that, you go to Detroit, which is not going to be an easy matchup. That place is loud, and Detroit is a tough team and a good team. Then on top of that, you go to London to face the Vikings, which that seems like a game that maybe is winnable based on what the Vikings offense has done at this point. Plus, J.J. McCarthy's now hurt. But in the same breath, you're going to London. That's not an easy place. It's not an easy trip to make. You got to go all the way across the world, halfway across the world, to go do that. So it's like there's some challenges that lie ahead. Then you got the Steelers. And so understanding where this team is at, that they're already 0-2, that they're flirting with a disastrous start, and more conversations about coaches being fired and quarterback changes and all these things. This feels like it kind of a just in the nick of time type situation for Quinshon to be elevated to the number one running back, and that they are going to be putting more on his plate is needed. They need this run game to be more effective than it's been through the first 2 weeks of the season. They need a run game that can set up the pass game and allow the Browns to do even more and execute things offensively that allow them to have more success than they have these first 2 weeks, and especially against that Ravens team this past weekend. Everyone keeps wondering, everyone keeps asking after these first 2 weeks, well, why wasn't there more shots downfield? Why weren't they taking more of those deep shots? That part of that is that you need to soften up the defense and get them thinking that you actually are a threat to run the football before those shots sort of become available to you, before you're able to actually take advantage of some lapses in coverage downfield, because teams think that you're also a threat to run the football. And so Quinshon being able to be an effective running back for this team and give them something for other teams, for their opponents to think about as far as the run game is concerned, might open up some of those opportunities to push the ball downfield, which we know Joe Flacco is extremely efficient with. And so, yes, like, you want those elements of the offense, but it's kind of the symbiotic relationship. They all kind of coexist together. The pass game is an extension, is the run game sets up the passing game, and sometimes the passing game sets up the run game. But you need that run game to sort of come back into the fold here and be something that teams have to at least account for. before you can really get to that point. Otherwise, you're just going to continue to see a lot of what you've seen so far, which is, hey, too high safety looks from defenses, got to dump it short, got to give it to Dylan Sampson in the flat, got to just kind of look over the middle of the field and not look deep downfield and just take what the defense gives you. And those are hard drives to maintain. I know that kind of has to be the game plan for this Browns offense, is have longer drives, eat more clock, all those things. But those aren't easy to sustain for 4 straight quarters, 17 games in a season, because you're asking your offense to do a lot. And it opens you up to more mistakes the more times that you're out there with the football. So it's all kind of, all these things kind of coexist together. We know going back to Kevin Stefanski's offense was a big, big point for this team this offseason and leading up to the season. And they're now in that system again. There was so much talk about, Joe Bitonio has highlighted the fact that going back to Stefanski's offense is one of the biggest reasons why he came back this year. And he felt like that was an important thing to convince him to keep playing football and wanting to stick around and give it a shot. Others have alluded to the fact that they're not just building the offense around a quarterback who now has his fair share of issues, maybe between the ears and playing football just in general, and that you're getting back to what the offensive line does best, what the team has done best in previous years. And that's, running the football is the biggest part of that. So if this offense is going to be successful, if they're going to get back to being able to score, 20 points and actually be an efficient group, they need this run game to give you a spark and give you some life offensively. And I think you saw some early spurts of that in week 2, especially late in the game. Quinshon had his best run late in the game, finished with 10 carries for 61 yards, 6.1 yards per carry. It was a pretty efficient day for him. I know some of that came in garbage time, so fine. Take it with a grain of salt to a degree. But there's reason to believe that he can be effective as he gets, his feet back underneath him, which is what the Browns have kind of been working through these last couple of weeks. And I think now is the time where you kind of hit the ground running with him. They've been impressed by how in shape he came in. Once he did arrive, that he sort of has picked things up pretty quickly, it seems. And so there's positive steps and results for Quinshon. And now he's just got to go out there and continue to do it on the football field. And I'm anticipating that this week, because especially with the depth chart sort of suggesting it, he'll be the lead guy. He'll be that lead back. He'll be that workhorse that he was drafted to be for this team. And if he's getting, 15, 20 plus carries a game, if he's involved in the passing game a little bit and able to make plays, I've talked about this already, but I think he's a bit of an eraser. He can make guys miss and make plays downfield, even when it looks like there's nothing there. If the offensive line isn't perfect, he can, not make those issues become things that, or not make miscues rather by the offensive line become things that completely halt the play. He can still make something happen. Maybe not to the level of Nick Chubb. I've said it before. I don't think it's fair to compare him to Nick Chubb, even though I think, somewhat similar in terms of what his projection or what he's supposed to sort of bring to this offense. He certainly is quick. And he's supposed to he is filling those shoes without question. But, I think there's talent enough there that he can help mask some problems on the offense just by getting the football in his hands and making things happen. And so the Browns need him to be effective. This Packers defense is no slouch. They're going to present some challenges for the Browns, especially in trying to stop the run. But getting Quinshon more acclimated and assimilated and making him be such a prominent part of this offense this weekend is going to be a major step in the right direction. And it's something that, frankly, this offense needs, because it needs more from this run game if everything else is going to start sort of coming together. And if the offense as a whole is going to be able to score more points and actually be more competitive against especially superior opponents, but every opponent that they face throughout the season. Meanwhile, the Browns defense, as good as it's been and as dominant as they have a chance to be, had its biggest weakness exposed by the Ravens this weekend. We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. These are moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward was Dylan Gabriel's fourth quarter touchdown pass to Dylan Sampson, which despite being in garbage time, I understand, of a blowout loss against the Ravens, it did feel like it was a little bit of a glimpse into the future for Cleveland. It was such a well-orchestrated series that the debate has officially begun on whether or not the Browns should be making a quarterback change already. And while it isn't coming yet, that moment will be one that keeps Browns fans moving forward as they think about the possibilities of Gabriel taking over the offense and maybe becoming a franchise quarterback this franchise has longed for. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. This episode is also brought to you by Game Time. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans, cheering on your favorite team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between keens, login screens, and price jumps at checkout is frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to us, the fans. Game Time became my go-to app for buying tickets. I kid you not. Just last year, I was buying tickets for my wife and I to go to Ohio State, Michigan. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. You can too. I'm talking about tickets to your favorite NFL games for as low as $100. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go download Game Time today. All right, so as good as this defense has a chance to be for the Browns, as dominant as the front seven in particular, I think is and has shown to be throughout these first two games, we got to call a spade here. The Browns' biggest offensive weakness was absolutely exposed by Baltimore this weekend, and it should make you worried about the fact that other teams will continue to try to exploit it as well. And what I'm talking about is the secondary, not so much the starters, because we know Denzel Ward's great. We know Greg Newsome has been so far really, really solid as an outside corner primarily for this team in the role that he's always wanted to play, and he's frankly thriving in it right now. So it's not so much those guys, but what we saw this weekend was that when Denzel Ward got hurt and was kind of in and out of the lineup and wasn't playing in this game for large stretches or for most of it, what you saw was a secondary that can be taken advantage of and exposed. It's the guys behind Greg Newsome and behind Denzel Ward that are problematic. It is your Cameron Mitchells. It is your Miles Hardens. Those guys are getting picked on by the Ravens. Cameron Mitchell in particular, who's had a very tumultuous, maybe that's the wrong word, but it was an up and down camp for him. I highlighted that on numerous occasions, the fact that you're talking about a guy who had some good moments at times, but then had some bad moments. You saw him give up a touchdown pass to the Eagles in that second preseason game. Like, there were some legitimate problems with Cameron Mitchell throughout this training camp that sort of reared their ugly head. And I think we saw that play out as well on Sunday against Baltimore. He was out there for longer stretches of the game, just, naturally by default because guys were hurt. Obviously, Denzel Ward wasn't available because he was dealing obviously with the injury that he had and was kind of out of the game for periods of time. But that opened things up for Cameron Mitchell, for example, to end up playing 48% of the snaps on defense, and Miles Harden to play 52% of the snaps. And I think that those two guys became the weak spots that the Ravens knew they could take advantage of, and that played out in real time. Cameron Mitchell gave up a touchdown in that game. It was just not good. And so you're realizing that that this is the area and this is the thing that is the weak spot of this defense right now. I understand linebacker. We've pointed in the past to the idea that that group doesn't have a lot of depth this year, though. And I did highlight this leading up to the season, especially when they still had Jordan Hicks in the fold. I thought that group was maybe going to be better than we anticipated. And with Carson Schlesinger doing what he's doing, that's certainly been the case. He's been awesome. Linked with the defensive line in front of them, that front seven's been really, really solid. It's been the back end of the defense that's been the most problematic. And you saw that on Sunday. This team just cannot afford any sort of injuries to Denzel, Greg. They obviously lost Martin Emerson Jr. for the season already back in training camp. That's where I think this thing gets exposed a little bit more. And it's interesting too, because most drafts in his tenure, Andrew Berry has drafted at least one secondary guy, one corner, right? That didn't happen this year. They chose not to use any picks on defensive backs. And so they were sort of banking on the guys that they drafted and compiled over the years, taking another step and developing and getting better. And that just hasn't necessarily happened so far this season and leading into the season. And so there's some questions there. It's going to continue to be an issue. You can guarantee the Packers are going to target those guys. You can guarantee other teams are going to target those guys. And so it is almost paramount for the sake of this defense. And if this team is going to be successful this year and end up having a somewhat productive season or successful season, it's almost paramount that you don't lose Denzel Ward or Greg Newsome for the entirety of the season. Those guys have to stay healthy, or this defense is going to experience some true issues on the back end, and teams are going to continue to exploit it. So the health of those two guys in particular is at the forefront of any success the Browns hope to have this year on defense. Because that pass rush, they make things hard for opposing quarterbacks and they make them get rid of the ball quickly. But that secondary is they are susceptible. So it's just a problem, and it's something that is not going away. There's not like a quick fix. There's not an easy way to go about fixing this. When you deal with injuries and a guy like MJ being out, it kind of is what it is. You got to sort of roll with the punches there. But there's no easy fix. But for a defense that we thought was so good, we have discovered pretty early on here that there is one glaring weakness in the fact that they just don't have a lot of depth at those secondary spots. And it's going to be a real problem for them as the season sort of progresses here, especially if Denzel is in and out of the lineup, dealing with injuries, if he's hurt, if that continues to linger, or if he or Greg Newsome are off the field for any stretch of time, watch out. And like I said, I don't know that was the area we necessarily started training camp thinking was going to be the weakest, but as it played out, we realized that is the case. And yes, this Browns team has a serious sort of issue on their hands in terms of having to sort of fix that. And that speaks larger, bigger picture to the idea that we're also focused on the quarterback position, what the Browns are going to do there next year, and if they're going to draft another guy and find their franchise quarterback. But they're going to have other areas to fill, and the secondary could be one of them, because we don't know what the future holds for Martin Emerson Jr. Denzel Ward's going to get a little bit older. Greg Newsome's going to be up for a contract. He might earn himself some big money if he keeps playing the way he's playing. So there's going to be a lot of decisions there in the future. But for now, you're kind of in survival mode with some guys that it's becoming pretty clear you can't necessarily trust on that back end. And it is the weakness of this defensive side of the football that the Browns are going to have to figure out and sort of navigate for the next 15 games and hope that they can repair this offseason, because there's no quick fix coming. And other teams now have seen the tape and know where they can attack this Browns defense and have some success, particularly in the passing game. So with that said, 15 games still feels like quite a long time for this Browns team to sort of keep things on the up and up, despite the 0-2 start that they're already off to. It's why I think it's Kevin Stefanski's biggest challenge yet as a head coach. We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. There's nothing better than following an NFL season with FanDuel, and frankly, the best part is they have options for however you like to bet. Maybe you're a prop bet person and you want to bet on a player to reach a certain benchmark in a game. Or maybe you want to combine a player's benchmark with a few other prop bets, or even a money line and build a same game parlay. Or you can just jump on the money line in real time, whether it's for your team, against your team, whatever, as the action unfolds. The options are endless. And it's what makes every game, whether it's your team playing or not, even more exciting. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now using FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, so with the Browns already off to an 0-2 start, they are teetering on a very, very, very tumultuous and touch-and-go situation here when it comes to how they navigate the rest of the season. And it's going to be a challenge, frankly, for Kevin Stefanski to, sort through this and keep the team on the up and up and moving in a positive direction. It's not going to be easy. If you thought last year was hard when they got off to the rough start, Deshaun Watson wasn't playing well, it's not going to get any easier this year when your team is already off to an 0-2 start. They could be looking at more losses to come here with the schedule that you play. And there's just a lot of questions that have to be answered, obviously, at this point. Like, Stefanski's dealt with some challenges, no doubt, throughout his career. The 2023 season, navigating that to get to the playoffs was impressive. It's one of the reasons he still has a job here in Cleveland. But I don't know if he's ever going to – to me, at least during his time as a head coach here in Cleveland, this is the biggest challenge he's going to face, is a team that is already trending in the wrong direction, 0-2 start to the season, and how does he keep morale up in that building? How does he not lose the locker room? Because as I talked about earlier this week, if you lose the locker room, there's no guarantee he's back next year. Despite what Jimmy Haslam's been saying about, being patient and digging themselves out of the quarterback situation they find themselves in and all that, despite all those things, if he loses the locker room and guys quit and games look more and more like they did on Sunday against the Baltimore Ravens, and that's how you're losing, there's no guarantee that he's back next year. And frankly, there shouldn't be a guarantee that you're back next year, because at some point you got to wear your team's results and the success on the field. And that's just not going to be there. So he's got to really be strategic in how he handles this thing. He's got to navigate a tough situation. It's not going to get any easier. Again, the schedule sets up where this team legitimately could be 0-6 in the next few weeks before we get to, getting some reprieve in a way from with a Dolphins team coming to town that feels like a sinking ship in their own right, with their coach situation, who might be fired by the end of this week. Who knows? There's a lot going on there in Miami, and that's your opponent in week 7. Maybe that's the best chance to start a rookie. Maybe that's where you can start to sort of get some wins and get back in the win column and all those different things. But you got to get to that point first, and you got to still keep morale up and keep guys motivated when, the season could really disintegrate and sink fast. And the other part of this too that he has to navigate is the conversation on the outside. It's that quarterback conversation. When is the right time to pull the plug on Flacco and put in the rookie? Because Joe Flacco looked like the best quarterback in training camp. You're trying to sell to your locker room that you're trying to win now and still, put yourself in position to be successful this year and not just throw in the towel on the season. But, that's easier said than done when things are going awry and things aren't going right. And at some point, you're going to have to pull that plug and go to a different quarterback that you think maybe gives you a better chance to win if things don't turn themselves around offensively, which could very well happen. We could see that similar trend this week against Green Bay. So there's a lot at stake here. There's a lot going on here. And Kevin Stefanski is squarely in the crosshairs of trying to navigate a season that could borderline a disaster. And that's just the truth. I mean, last year was a disaster going 3-14 when you had Super Bowl aspirations, and another year of realizing that the Deshaun Watson trade and situation was just not going to pan out and all that. It was bad. It was as bad as it gets. This year, the expectations were low, but if the one way he loses his job for sure is if it gets so ugly that guys are quitting and you got infighting and you got problems in the locker room, and that very well could happen when there's a lot of losing going on and you're off to a rough start, already trending in that direction with the 0-2 record to begin the year. So this year, and I think I've talked about this a little bit in the offseason as well, is going to be a true test for Kevin Stefanski to see how he overcomes some of the lowest of lows that his team probably is going to experience. It is not a good situation right now with the way things are going. Maybe Quinshon Judkins provides that spark to the offense that they need, and they can get this thing back on track and start scoring 20 points a game and give themselves a shot. Maybe they can shock everybody and beat the Green Bay Packers this weekend. We'll see. It's any given Sunday, of course. But when you have Myles Garrett going to the press conference podium after a game on Sunday and already dropping the line of it's embarrassing, and Joe Flacco talking about how embarrassed he was about some of his miscues in that game and just some of the problems that continue to persist already 2 weeks in, it's already heading in a direction that can get very, very dicey for a head coach, frankly. And so Kevin Stefanski is going to have to tread lightly here. It's going to be a test. It's going to be a challenge. He's going to have to find the best ways. And he does talk about all the time, trying to keep his message from going stale, right? And it's hard because when you're in a building for long enough, sometimes Pittsburgh has this conversation all the time, right? The idea that Mike Tomlin, maybe his message has just gotten a little rotten, and that's why they can't get over the hump and win playoff games anymore. And like this year could be a year of reckoning for Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, if they come up short again when they sort of pushed all the chips to the center of the table here this offseason with the guys that they added. That could come to fruition here too, or for them too. But I think Stefanski's generally done a pretty good job of trying to keep a new message each year and keep guys bought in. But it's harder to do that when you're losing a lot. And right now, it's hard for me to watch this team on Sunday and feel good about like guaranteeing any sorts of wins. I tried to do it week one. There were some vibes there. I was feeling good about it. They probably should have won that game. But as competitive as I thought they were going to be, they looked non-competitive towards the end of that Ravens game, especially from an offensive standpoint. And that's the biggest concern, because if you can't score points, who are you going to beat in this league? Not a lot of people. And so this could really spiral from here. And if it does, Stefanski is going to have quite the challenge on his hands and quite the dilemma on his hands as he tries to keep everybody bought in and save his job. And it might not be that easy if the locker room falls apart and he loses those guys. So as he certainly has faced some challenges here in Cleveland, there's no doubt about it. Some of them are self-created or created by the organization or the regime. Some of them just out of his hands, injuries, all those different things. But I can tell you this is probably his biggest challenge yet during his time here as head coach of the Cleveland Browns. And it might end up it's going to probably get worse before it starts getting better. And he's going to have to navigate some touching, a very touchy situation and potentially a very touchy locker room if the trajectory that they're on continues, especially early in the season for this first 6 games of the season. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thank you for joining me to talk about your favorite football team. If you liked what you heard, hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every day, wherever you get your podcasts, and at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel for your second listen. Get a double dose of Locked On NFL. Tyler, the Madman Rowland, gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day. And then Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop with the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. You can find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, you can always keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. See ya.